Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be in community with you all. Thank you for being here tonight for our annual Martin Luther King Jr. event, where we join in honoring King's legacy. My name is Bea Maki-Kau. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Director for Student Diversity and Belonging. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement before I invite Dr. Jamie Patton to say a few welcoming words. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather carries the heritage and culture of the indigenous people of San Luis Obispo County, the Yaktitu-Titu Yaktilhini Northern Chumash tribe. We honor the indigenous people's connection to these territories and respect the land on which we are on today as uninvited guests. As we live and learn on these territories, we must keep in mind decolonization and recognition expands beyond statements. Acknowledgement by itself is a small gesture and becomes meaningful when coupled with authentic relationship and informed action. I would now like to introduce Dr. Jamie Patton, Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs, Diversity, and Inclusion, to kick us off.
Good evening. Thank you, Bea. Thank you all for joining us tonight at our honoring Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. event. My name is Jamie Patton. I use he and him pronouns and serve as Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs here at Cal Poly. Thank you to the Black Academic Excellence Center and ASI Events for inviting me to speak today. I am so glad we have this tradition as a way for our community to strive for the aspirations of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We stand united in our belief that we must do more to make Dr. King's dream of equity, justice, and inclusion a reality. I truly believe Cal Poly is committed to this work, not just because it is right and just, but because living these values makes us a better institution, and these are essential to upholding our motto of learn by doing. However you chose to spend this past Monday, I'm hopeful you took some time to remember Dr. King and reflect on how each and every one of us can advance the values he stood for in our own lives and in the community that we share. One of the things that I did this past Monday was took a long walk. I don't take many long walks, but maybe it was the inspiration of Dr. King that I found myself walking 5 miles. After a while, I found myself thinking about the marches of the 60s and those that happened this past year. Hundreds of thousands of people marching for freedom and justice. For me, it was wild listening and finding the parallels of Dr. King's 1965 speech, Our God is Marching On, and today. And it says, though their control of the mass media, social media, they revised the doctrine of white supremacy. They saturated the thinking of the poor white masses with it, thus clouding their minds in the real issue involved in the movement. I'm glad we made a little bit of movement earlier today and the end of last year. He went on to say, let us therefore continue our triumphant march to the realization of the American dream. Let us march on segregated housing until every ghetto or social and economic depression dissolves, and Negroes and whites live side by side in decent, safe, and sanitary housing. Further, he said, let us march on segregated schools until every vestige of segregated and inferior education becomes a thing of the past, and Negroes and whites study side by side in a socially healing context of the classroom. The only normalcy And I know that's something that we're looking for deeply today. But in 1965, Dr. King said the only normalcy that we will settle for is a normalcy that recognizes the dignity and worth of all of God's children. The only normalcy that we will settle for is a normalcy that allows judgment to run down like waters of righteousness, like a mighty stream. The only normalcy that we will settle for is a normalcy of brotherhood, the normalcy of true peace, the normalcy of justice. That's just one snippet of one of his many speeches that helped to inspire the work that we continue to work on and the work that we continue today. And I've always loved to listen to Dr. King speak, not just because of what he said, but the conviction of his action. And I'm hopeful it does the same for you as we must work together towards justice. We have hope. We will not let hate win. Just as our parents and our grandparents did before us, we will continue to fight until we win, just like they did to bring about civil rights. We must fight for our ancestors' wildest dreams. We must continue to march. We must fight for our children. We must fight for our future, for everyone's future. As we consider our walk towards justice together, I want to leave you with the words of Dr. King, words that he spoke from the Lincoln Memorial at the March of Washington in 1963. We cannot be satisfied until justice rolls like waters of righteousness, like a mighty stream. I welcome you to our event tonight, and I look forward to the rest of our program, especially hearing from our student speakers and our distinguished guests. Thank you for being here. It is now my pleasure to turn the program over to Ms. Javon Edwards, who has been assisting with the Black Academic Excellence Center and help with this program tonight. Please help me welcome her.
Thank you, Bea, for the land acknowledgement, and thank you, Dr. Patton, for the powerful words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And indeed, we must continue the fight for justice. Again, my name is Javon Edwards. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm an admissions officer and graduate student in the Higher Education Counseling and Student Affairs program here at Cal Poly. And it is my privilege to be able to support the Black Academic Excellence Center this quarter and serve as the chair of the MLK Legacy Award Committee. I'm thrilled to be with you all during this evening's event and in honor of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I now have the pleasure of introducing our first speaker, Aman Asfal. Aman is a first-generation Ethiopian American from Thousand Oaks, California, and recently graduated this past spring from Cal Poly with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. Aman is currently pursuing his master's degree in the electrical engineering graduate program and is a teaching associate within the College of Engineering. Aman has previously served as the chairman for the City of San Luis Obispo's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, the Black Love Event Coordinator for Cal Poly's Black Student Union, and the Diversity Director for Cal Poly Sigma Nu Fraternity. And to add to his extensive list of involvement and commitment to service, Aman is the current president of Cal Poly's National Society of Black Engineers and a columnist for the American Society for Engineering Education's Prism magazine. Please give a warm virtual welcome to Cal Poly's very own Aman Asfal, who will be reciting an open letter he has written inspired by MLK's letter from Birmingham jail.
I'm just gonna imagine the applause, but thank you, everyone. I will go ahead and start my letter. Dear future torchbearers, I'd like to open with a quick mental activity. Take a few moments to mentally list the most famous oral speeches of all time that pop into your head. Let's see if you can list 3. Go. Or you could throw it in the chat box. In 1948, Martin Luther King Jr. enrolled in the Crozer Theological Seminary. In his second term, he matriculated into a public speaking class where he received a seemingly measly C+ grade. He then took a subsequent Public Speaking 1 class in his third term and earned an even lower C grade. Yes, you heard that right. The Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. earned C's in his postgraduate public speaking courses. Isn't it remarkable that this very same person is also the orator of one of the speeches you thought of in your head just now? Do this activity with any person, any day of the year, and most folks will recall King's I Have a Dream speech. I say this not only to challenge our archaic metrics of academic success, but also to exemplify King's ability to transcend institutional judgment, and how we should all strive to transcend the traditional evaluations of our nation's institutions as well. I reflect to you today on America's 2021 Inauguration Day as a fellow Black student in his 5th and final academic year at Cal Poly. I am now ready to pass the torch. My attempts at leadership and voluntary service here in SLO span a range of realms. I need not list what my past roles are though, because I realized all position titles are a superficial limitation and expectation of one's impact. My first reflection, I am weary of titles. You are not your title, and your title is not who you are. If you are the social media chair for an org, why can't you take on building a brand new chapter or club website? If you're a faculty member, why can't you also act as a parental figure to students? If you're an administrator, why can't you partake in nonviolent direct actions? On the topic of nonviolent direct actions, I think there's still a massive misunderstanding. So I reiterate the words from Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail, written in 1963, quote, "We who engage in nonviolent direct actions are not the creators of tension. We merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. We bring it out in the open, where it can be seen and dealt with," end quote. The same way one regularly exfoliates their skin to cure blemishes, we must also consistently exfoliate our predominantly white institutions to cure all permutations of prejudice. However, as MLK Jr. preached, we cannot confront our normal and healthy boils without creative, constructive, and nonviolent tension. This good and necessary tension is the same tension spoken of by Victor Glover just last week when speaking to Cal Poly's National Society of Black Engineers live from the International Space Station. Our astronaut asserted that the source of our physical muscle growth is the tension we place in our muscles from lifting weights. He said emotional and spiritual growth work the same way, through tension. So my second reflection, create uncomfortable, inclusive spaces which promote the growth of humanity. The possibilities of this are endless. You could boycott your Black Academic Excellence Center until you get a bigger one. You could protest your campus's annual commencement until tuition costs are lowered. Shoot, if all else fails, you could even sit on the road in the front of a stopped car with a sign that reads, "The caucasity in America is astronomical." I warn you though, being the owner of such an uncomfortable space may come with a hefty initial down payment. But fear not, because as with most all equity investments, this one will eventually accrue in value via the growth of humanity. So my third reflection, despite the vagaries of life, our trajectory is up. Progress shall prevail. When you are nearing success and igniting the growth of your community, a select few will attempt to tarnish your name. This is a sign you are of value. Protect and burgeon that value as if you are the last torch left in a pitch black cave. Your fellow torchbearer, Aman Asfa.
Thank you, Aman, for your powerful and thoughtful words. We must indeed continue to keep the tension on the pursuit of social justice and pass the torch. Thank you for your open letter and reflections. Our next speaker is Chloe Jane Wardrick. Chloe is a fourth-year architecture student, minoring in sustainable environments and real property development. While growing up in Fresno, California, Chloe began to take on leadership roles within her high school's African American Student Union Club, as well as creating feeder school leadership programs for elementary students within her community. Today, Chloe continues to advocate for marginalized groups through her leadership positions within the Black Student Union, National Society of Black Engineers, and the Student-Led Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee within the College of Architecture and Environmental Design. As a Cal Poly Emeritus Scholar, Chloe hopes to continually use her varying positions to widen support and resources for the amazing people that attend Cal Poly and for those that will in the future. Please welcome Chloe Jane Wardrick.
Thank you, Jovan, for that introduction. I would just like to preface this as this is my letter to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I'm addressing you tonight as if you are watching this event with all of us right now. 92 years young with the same tenacious energy towards the fight for justice, and most importantly, humanity. Today, we are here to commemorate your life and work. I remember briefly in my time of early education learning about your legacy, but primarily in the scope of your advocacy within the civil rights movement. Your ability to pave bold new pathways for future activists allow us to speak about your prominent influences as if you are beside us along this journey. As a child, your legacy was symbolic, not just a symbol of equality, peace, bravery, and love, but a symbol of continued action. You have so greatly affected the quality of life for many because of your determined efforts in the fight for justice. If you and the other countless brave souls hadn't chose to fight those battles, I personally would not be educated, trained, or even employed in the same way I am today. And I most definitely wouldn't be up here speaking like I am tonight. With the combination of a global pandemic, divestment of our communities, Black, brown, and white, frustrations over the continual anti-Black sentiment that fills this country, violence inflicted on Black body after body, and unsuccessful leadership at many levels has led us to demand a revolutionary shift in the way we treat, conversate, and lead each other for the greater good. Today, we saw the inauguration of a new leader of this country. Though this may be an opportunity to celebrate, this does not mean that our work, efforts, and challenges end here. The transition from party to party is insignificant as we continually see the disregard from both sides when it comes to the needs of the Black community. You, MLK, saw the transition of power occur 3 times in the height of your campaign for justice. Knowing that, I'm sure that you can agree with me that in this time, more than ever, we must make sure those we voted into these positions hold true to what they have promised us. In the height of recent events, I ask you, how are we doing? The progress we have made this year as a community is, lack for a better word, historical. Do you recognize this country, the one you and others fought so hard to unite and integrate? This year, we have seen a worldwide unification and organization of the largest group of Black and brown leaders with allies by their sides. In my hometown, I witnessed just a small group of us come together on the street corner each and every week in protest for the humanization of our Blackness. Despite the ingrained racism within my city, We never let that diminish the value of our work. Young Black leaders like myself are driven by your words. Social progress never rolls in on the wheel of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals. We demand the elevation of our voices and the opportunity to be seen, heard, and trusted. I ask you, do you still have a dream? This national racial crisis is unfolding day by day, and I sometimes wonder, what would MLK do? The dream that all those are created equal and should be treated as such is still a truth and shouldn't have to be a reminder. There is a fundamental cry for liberation from a violent structure formed against our Black communities. We look to you for guidance as we dream for a better future. Your legacy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., echoes the urgency of creating and fostering humanitarian rights that transcends through generations, influencing our decision, progressions, and actions. So we should all be asking ourselves tonight, how can we continue this legacy? Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe, for sharing your letter to Dr. Martin Luther King and the questions you shared with us. We can all sit and reflect on these questions and pursue action towards embodying and honoring the legacy and values of MLK. Thank you, Chloe. Now, many of you are familiar with the story I'm about to share. On April 19th, 1989, a young woman in the prime of her life was brutally raped and left for dead in New York City's Central Park. 5 boys, 4 Black, and 1 Latino were tried and convicted of the crime in a frenzied case that rocked the city. They became known collectively as the Central Park 5. Their convictions were vacated in 2002 after spending between 7 and 13 years of their lives behind bars. The convictions of the boys, now men, were overturned and they were exonerated. One of those boys, Yusef Salaam, was just 15 years old when his life was upended and changed forever. Since his release, Yusef has committed himself to advocating and educating people on the issues of false convictions, police brutality and misconduct, press ethics and bias, race and law, and the disparities in America's criminal justice system. In 2014, the Central Park 5 received a multi-million-dollar settlement from the city of New York for his grievous injustice against them. Yusef was awarded an honorary doctorate that same year and received the President's Lifetime Achievement Award in 2016 from President Barack Obama. He was appointed to the board of the Innocent Project in 2018 and has released a Netflix featured limited series called When They See Us, based on a true story of the Central Park 5 in May of 2019. His story is an example of how the fight for racial justice must remain relevant and persistent. It is my honor and privilege to introduce our special guest, Dr. Yusef Salaam.
So much, Javon. Thank you, Dr. Salaam, for your powerful words. It's truly an honor to have you present today for our 2021 MLK annual event. I'm really excited to be able to transition us to the awarding of the 2021 MLK Legacy Award. This award recognizes a campus community member who upholds the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by leading with love and hope to create a better campus community. The recipient of this award is someone who is integral to creating a legacy at Cal Poly that centers diversity, equity, and inclusion. This award seeks to honor someone who advocates for equity in the face of seen and unseen injustices. As Dr. Salaam mentioned, the revolution is not televised. The MLK Legacy Award seeks to recognize a leader that Dr. King described as a leader not in love with money, but in love with justice. Not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity. This very sentiment was again echoed at this morning's inauguration by Amanda Gorman when she said, "If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy. This is the essence of the MLK Legacy Award. And with that, I'd like to pass it back to Javon to announce our 2021 recipient.
Thank you, Bea. It is my honor to announce that Dr. Blanca Martinez Navarro is the winner of the 2021 MLK Legacy Award. Dr. Martinez Navarro has committed her personal and professional life to the pursuit of educational equity, social justice, and inclusion, and has wholeheartedly exemplified the values and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Martinez Navarro currently serves as the Associate Dean of Students at Cal Poly and has dedicated her time working behind the scenes to advocate for issues that impact students' success. This past year has been particularly difficult for students who have needed additional support due to the various impacts caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and the continued challenges of navigating systemic inequities, racism, and oppression. Dr. Martinez Navarro has been said to always lead with empathy and compassion, whether supporting an individual student or managing a crisis. To say the least, she has been essential in her role as the Associate Dean of Students and has worked to holistically support and champion our Cal Poly students. Along with being an advocate for student success, Dr. Martinez Navarro has demonstrated her commitment to service and is deeply committed to giving back to the Cal Poly community. Dr. Martinez Navarro is an active member of the Chicano Latino Faculty and Staff Association and the Black Faculty and Staff Association. She has also served in Cal Poly's Inclusive Excellence Council and contributed immensely to the Bias Incident Response Team, which led to the revision of the Bias Incident Response Protocol for the Office of the Dean of Students. To add to her involvement and commitment to service, Dr. Martinez Navarro has served on several committees, including the Disability and Inclusion Committee and the Campus Climate Strategy Group for the Office of University Diversity and Inclusion. Furthermore, Dr. Martinez Navarro has been recognized by her colleagues as a strong collaborator on the collective impact work that was done on campus, which subsequently led to many of the diversity, equity, and inclusion achievements visible on our campus today. Dr. Martinez Navarro has become an invaluable member of the Cal Poly community and has committed herself to equity, social justice, and commitment to service. She has proven to be an agent of change and has countlessly demonstrated the values of Martin Luther King Jr. through her courage, her empathy, her compassion, her selflessness, and her passion for service. Dr. Martinez Navarro embodies this legacy of MLK, and it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce Dr. Blanca Martinez Navarro as the recipient of the 2021 Martin Luther King Jr. Legacy Award. Congratulations.
Thank you, Javon. I'm truly humbled and very grateful to be honored in such an amazing way. It truly is with great honor, privilege, and immense humility that I accept Dr. Martin Luther King's Legacy Award. To be recognized as a person who reflects Dr. King's value is an overwhelming honor, and one that I also take as a reminder that his work and legacy remains relevant and critical to our work today. More than 60 years later, I accept this award during a very challenging and dark time in our nation. During a time of violent racism and anti-Blackness, devastating economic and health disparities magnified by the global pandemic, and an unprecedented level of political division and mistrust that has truly resulted in a genuine fear of life for many in our country. Times sadly similar to those lived and experienced by Dr. King himself, and manifested through the intergenerational traumas carried by many of our students, especially our BIPOC students. I've spent the last few weeks, months, frankly years, overwhelmed and sad, angry, and in moments astounded by what is happening in our nation. In my work with students, I have witnessed firsthand the challenges exacerbated with the outgoing presidency. Many students who bear the emotional scars of not only these times, but those of the past, supporting them through their moments of crisis and unexpected challenges, and asking myself, how can I continue to be an instrument of transformational change, hope, radical love, and healing? It is times like this when I am reminded of King's words. Too many people fail to remain awake through great periods of social change. But today, our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge of change. I accept this award today, guided by Dr. King's words and motivated by today's inauguration, and accept his challenge of staying awake and vigilant during these trying times, to engage in transformative ideas that create equitable, inclusive, and unifying spaces for all students, and to embrace the challenge of changes and reimagine a better and a more hopeful tomorrow for all. Thank you so very much for this honor.
Congratulations again, Blanca, and thank you, Javon. It's a great honor to see you receive this award, and I couldn't think of a better recipient for this year. And I'm so grateful to our selection committee for the 2021 MLK Legacy Award for your efforts in making this selection for this evening, and all of those people who submitted nominations. As we end our event this evening, I have to close by saying thank you again to Dr. Salam, our incredible student speakers who shared their stories and testimonies, the Black Academic Excellence Center team, and in particular, Javon and Leilani, for whom without this event certainly would not be possible. Thank you to ASI Events for being an incredible partner and aiding us in creating traditions at Cal Poly rooted in justice and equity. Congratulations again to Dr. Martinez Navarro on receiving the 2021 MLK Legacy Award, and thank you all for joining us this evening in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. May we all remember his legacy and be called upon in the continual pursuit of racial justice and equity. Thank you all so very much, and I hope you have a beautiful evening.